G'day guys, Ben Morgan from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia. I thought I would jump online here to Facebook this afternoon, do a very quick Facebook Live. I've just come back from ABC Studios in Sydney, where I've taken part in a television interview and also Radio National interview on CASA's proposed changes, or what are now formal changes to community service flights, which will obviously impact on our industry's ability to volunteer and take part in this just amazing charity. Before I really get started on this, I want to try and update our members on a number of issues. I really want to put a very big shout out to every single Angel Flight pilot, aircraft owner who donates the use of their aircraft, to all of their ground support team members, and to all of the families, the 100,000 individuals that have used the Angel Flight services over the last 16 years. Rather than attack this particular section of our industry, I would have felt that the Civil Aviation Safety Authority and also our Minister could very well have supported Angel Flight and have heralded the heroes that each and every week are out there transporting people in need. From our association's perspective, AOPA takes our hat off to each and every participant in this portion of the industry. It's an incredibly caring thing for our pilots and aircraft owners to be doing, and so we support that. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, there's been a significant amount of media which has been generated by AOPA and also Angel Flight and others regarding the changes that CASA are proposing to introduce in this particular sector. And I'd like to make very clear that AOPA Australia has stood incredibly firm in our opposition to a raft of these changes, which we view and which are viewed by the broader industry as potentially destroying this otherwise fantastic charity. And it's with great pleasure that I am able to say to our members that through that media campaign over the past 3 weeks, we have been successful in having the AD ENG4 requirements removed from these changes. And so no longer will the Civil Aviation Safety Authority be bringing forward a requirement that private aircraft owners are going to have to maintain those aircraft engines to charter industry standard. I'm sure thousands of aircraft owners out there would agree with the AOPA sentiment and also that of our Angel Flight colleagues that to be forced to maintain these aircraft engines to a charter industry standard was just a completely unnecessary step and simply would have added an enormous layer of cost which would have prevented quite a significant number of aircraft owners from participating. So it's been something that we've been incredibly proud to be involved in advocating for the removal of that AD ENG4 requirement. And it's a great demonstration that standing up on behalf of the industry and vocalising our concerns is something that we shouldn't be afraid of. We should be out there doing it more often. And I'm pretty certain that everyone would agree that unfortunately, over the last 20 or 30 years, the general aviation community has been faced with situations like this, but on a whole gamut of regulation issues that have led to decline. And I know that Ben Wyndham, one of our directors, is very passionate about the industry's Part 135 reforms, which are having a huge detrimental impact on our charter industry and will continue to have a huge detrimental impact on the charter industry as we go forward. And so work needs to be done. I would like to say to those of you that are tuning in that are possibly not AOPA members, now is a great time for you to get on board and pledge your support to AOPA. We are committed, more than committed, we are invested into protecting your rights as an aircraft owner and your rights as a pilot. And we've been incredibly proud to stand with Angel Flight side by side on this issue. Today, I took part in a television interview and a radio interview with the ABC, and we learned something that's incredibly disappointing, and that is that the Civil Aviation Safety Authority has found time to provide a briefing to Australian media regarding the final changes that they will now be imposing on our industry. The fact that the media has been briefed in advance of our aircraft owner, pilot and aviation business community, and of course the volunteer stakeholders, is just absolutely incredible. CASA all the time talk about their consultancy, that they consult with industry, that they speak with us, they seek our opinions, and yet they've found time to go out and brief the ABC and the Australian Friday last week as to what the changes are going to be. And yet we, the stakeholders in aviation, are now becoming the last people to find out exactly what CASA will be imposing. AOPA Australia over the last 2.5, 3 years has been calling out this lack of consultancy. And again, I'll call it out right now. CASA, you need to be doing a better job. The stakeholders of this industry deserve the opportunity to take part in the debate and the dialogue regarding changes that will so directly impact on our industry. We need to be part of that conversation. And going to the Australian media and having a conversation about the changes just 5 days after the public consultation period closed has sent a hugely clear message that your consultancy is a sham. And I'm happy to say it, it is a sham. We are all too often told by CASA that you guys are listening and that you are actually taking into consideration the needs of the industry. Well, if the public consultation on these community service flights had only concluded 5 days ago, exactly how much attention to detail have you provided in analysing what the needs and aspirations of this industry are? I would dare say that very little has gone into it, and that you had already made your minds up before you commenced this consultation process. And for the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Michael McCormack, who is the Minister for Transport, be under no illusions, Mr. McCormack. You are responsible for this policy change. These policy changes that are being driven by unelected government officials, bureaucrats, you are responsible for these people. The outcome of the changes to the community service flights rests solely on your shoulders. You are the leader of the Nationals. You purport to be the party that looks after regional Australia. And let me ask you the question, how can you possibly imagine that you're supporting people in the bush by removing their right to decide how they will care for their loved ones and family members? I would dare say that you're not actually supporting that process by supporting this policy, and what you're actually clearly communicating is that when push comes to shove, the Nationals won't stand up for people in the bush. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed. I want to speak personally here, not as AOPA, but just as myself. I've been a Liberal National voter my whole life. And I'm really starting to question as to whether the Liberal National Party are prepared to stand up for me and my friends out in regional Australia, or whether you're prepared to throw us all under the bus through inappropriate policy that really does not answer a safety case. Which brings me to a very important point, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. The safety case for these changes, where is it? Where is the evidence to suggest that the changes that CASA are bringing forward will actually solve any problem? It's an accepted norm within the aviation industry globally that if you're going to introduce rules or regulation changes that are designed to improve safety, that we overlay these against historical accidents, and we ask ourselves a very important question. Will these changes, or would these changes, have prevented those accidents from occurring? I think it's only pertinent that you ask the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to publish that safety case, put that risk assessment forward, and to demonstrate to our aviation industry that these changes, which are now being forced on us, whether we like it or not, demonstrate whether the safety case behind these changes, and to show the aviation industry that these changes actually make sense. Because the vast majority of us don't believe they make sense. And what seems to have been missed in all of this discussion is that to make aviation safe, which every single aircraft owner and pilot wishes to participate in, is about education and support. Those two very tragic accidents that every single participant of our industry feels bad about and wishes didn't occur, probably wouldn't have occurred with greater pilot education and peer support. But that can't be provided through the changes that CASA are promoting and proposing, or now enforcing. So there is a real problem here, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. And we've been calling on you now for the last 3 weeks for some evidence, some substance to be put on the table, and for this to be explained. And quite disappointingly, today I'm called by the ABC to participate in television interviews to answer questions on changes which have now been approved, and yet changes that have never been discussed with the aviation industry. How did this happen? How have these unelected government officials been able to change policy that will so directly influence the lives of people in regional Australia? How did these changes come to be if our own industry has never been consulted? AOPA Australia has never been asked directly by CASA a single question in relation to these issues. In fact, it's worse than that, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. The AOPA Australia in 2017, following the last accident, sought to approach CASA And we spoke to them directly about the need to create pilot support and education facilities to help provide a greater level of safety. But can you imagine our concern in December of last year when CASA came out and announced to the entire Australian public that insufficient safety progress had been made by industry and therefore they've been forced into making these changes? A statement that's patently untrue. I know through my discussions with Angel Flight, our own discussions within our own organisation, that we are very keen to play a role in aviation safety, but to do that, it requires CASA to play a role in collaboration. For the past 3 years, CASA has continued to accept the request for AOPA to take part in their consultancy panels and to play a role in helping protect and promote our own industry. Is it appropriate that CASA now comes out with such statements? I'd think not. And I dare say that those statements will probably likely be tested in a court of law in the not too distant future. Because the statements that have been made by CASA over the last 3 weeks have served to completely defame the Australian aviation industry. They've served to undermine confidence in the professionalism of our pilot community. They've served to undermine confidence in the way in which our aircraft engineers perform their duties. In every respect, CASA's statements across the last 3 weeks should never have occurred, yet they have. And Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, the responsibility is on your shoulders. You are the Minister for Transport. You are responsible. As I've said in my ABC radio interview and my television interviews today, I think you need to come out of hiding. I think you need to come out of hiding and you need to stand in front of the Australian public and you need to explain why you, the leader of the Nationals, have supported this policy. And you need to take ownership and make certain that every Australian understands that this decision was your decision. There is an election coming up. It's not too far away. And I dare say that every Australian that has been impacted by these changes, will be impacted by these changes, will remember this and they'll take it to their vote at that election. It's really disappointing that Australia's aviation industry continues to be treated the way that it is. AOPA over the last 2.5, 3 years has tried to put a voice to much of this. And unfortunately, the bureaucrats and the political representatives involved have elected to ignore. Well, I dare say that ignoring the problem is no solution at all. And whilst we're calling out bad policy and we're identifying the things that are making it very difficult for our industry to advance and prosper, it doesn't mean that we can't work with government, and it certainly doesn't mean that we can't work with the regulator. We believe it's very important for AOPA to continue to call out the policy decisions and the regulatory decisions that are driving our industry into decline. We have a responsibility to see to it that they are called out and that we do shine some UV in so that hopefully we can effect some change. And sometimes it's not pleasant. I can certainly attest to this one fact that I don't like occupying my day highlighting that there are such problems and difficulties in the industry. And I would far prefer to be out singing the praise of a government that's supporting general aviation and helping provide a pathway and a pipeline to success and opportunity. The challenge that I see sitting in front of us, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, is very simple. And that is, will your government and will your party stand up for general aviation and oppose these senseless and unnecessary changes? Will you, as the leader of the Nationals, and will your party support a new era for general aviation in Australia? Or are you going to go to an election with an industry on its knees? I'm Ben Morgan from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia, and I wish every participant of Angel Flight the best. Obviously, there is still a distance to go in overcoming some of these challenges, and in the coming weeks, we'll be calling on members of Parliament and senators to put forward a motion of disallowance for this unnecessary rule change. It is our intention to work side by side with Angel Flight and any other aviation industry body in seeking the assistance of our political representatives to overcome this total stupidity. And hopefully, common sense will prevail and thousands of families across Australia will not have to face the ghastly bloody future of being denied the right to choose how they travel. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. As I've said, get in there, support AOPA. Let's work together to see if we can't change this silliness. Thanks a lot.